This content is brought to you by I Trust Capital, which is a great platform that allows you to easily invest in crypto without worrying about taxes or fees. I Trust Capital allows you to invest in crypto through an individual retirement account or IRA. IRAs are tax sheltered accounts, which means all of your crypto is tax free and can even grow tax free over time. The process of signing up with I Trust Capital is very easy. They have a mobile app. They have 25 plus cryptocurrencies. They have full support, a dedicated team ready to help you. And it is free. And once again, 100% free to sign up with I Trust Capital. There are no hidden fees and there's no monthly subscription or membership. They also have great security. They utilize Coinbase custody for all their custodial services. So you don't have to worry. It is institutional grade crypto custody that they are using. This is a great platform. Once again, it is free to sign up. So visit the link in the description and go check it out. If you sign up with my link, you get a $100 funding bonus. So once again, check the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Brett Harrison, who's the president of FTX US. Brett, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, Brett, pretty cool things that FTX has been doing. You guys have got a lot of momentum going, and there's a lot of questions I have for you. But I would love to get to know you better. Can you tell us about your background, where you're from, where'd you grow up?
Sure, yeah. So I was born in New York, grew up on Long Island. I studied computer science in college and thought I would probably be like a programmer at a big tech firm or something like that, but then followed some friends to Wall Street, to the proprietary trading firm Jane Street Capital, where I worked for 8 years as a software developer and eventually as a manager of software developers. It was during my time there that I overlapped with and worked with Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the CEO and co-founder of FTX. And we worked at a couple other places in between, but then Sam eventually reached out and brought me over to help lead out FTX US.
Very cool. And what was your first encounter with Bitcoin and what was your aha moment?
Yeah, so my first encounter was in late 2017. I was still at Jane Street and they were building out their crypto trading desk and helped them some of the early days of that. I'll admit I didn't quite have my aha moment at that time, mostly because from the trading side, the exchanges were something of a mess. And I had truly believed this wouldn't last another 6 months, and I was completely wrong. I think probably the aha moment was really when I first had joined FTX really and saw everything that was being built and saw how open and inclusive the community was, and got to get my hands dirty on some software projects for the first time with crypto, and just saw like how easy it was to transfer money between two people compared to what I understood in the traditional finance world, and thought this is some really incredible technology that's going places.
So I ask all my guests, what do you hold in your crypto portfolio?
Oh man. I will say that I won't disclose what's in my crypto portfolio, only because with the exchange itself, I really want us to be as unbiased as possible. I mean, otherwise there's a bit of a conflict of interest between what we're listing and what we're holding personally and things like that. So I'll have to abstain from that particular one.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's talk about FTX. Can you tell us about the history of FTX and how it got started and the genesis of it, and maybe all the different products you guys have available? I know there's FTX derivatives, there's the app, there's FTX US and so forth. If you can
Sure.
give us the full story.
Yeah, definitely. So Sam founded FTX 3 years ago, and he had previously built a trading firm that was trading on all these different derivatives exchanges, and discovered that the infrastructure was going down all the time, or having high latency during periods of volatility. They were automatically liquidating customers in ways that were very inefficient during downturns or upturns, depending on their margin positions, and clawing back customer losses, clawing back customer profits to pay for the customer losses. And in general, were not pleasant places to do business with. And so he built FTX from the ground up to be an answer to those issues on these different exchanges. And the goal was to be the premier derivatives exchange for crypto in the world. It is now the second or third largest crypto exchange in the world. And it offers a number of different products, not just crypto derivatives, but crypto spot, things like prediction markets, tokenized stocks, other kinds of more traditional financial cash settled products. But those operate in basically most jurisdictions, but not the United States for regulatory reasons. So around a year and a half ago, they started FTX US, which is a US regulated entity that originally was just offering spot crypto. But in the end of 2021, we acquired a CFTC regulated derivatives exchange called LedgerX, which we've since rebranded to FTX US Derivatives, with the goal of being able to offer crypto futures and options to US customers. Aside from that, we, in early 2021, acquired an app called Blockfolio, which was a crypto tracking app, but now is a crypto tracking and trading app that uses FTX in the back end. And in fact, we've renamed that app to just be FTX. That's our main retail trading app. We have a pro app and website as well for more advanced traders. We also have a few other services, like we have an NFT marketplace on our platform that supports Solana and Ethereum NFTs. We have a gaming unit. We recently acquired a game studio and are looking to, in general, do more blockchain-based gaming integrations. We have a product called FTX Pay, which lets merchants be able to accept payment in the form of crypto. And we also have, finally, an upcoming platform where we're hoping to offer vanilla US stock trading to our customers in addition to crypto.
Wow. You guys are growing pretty fast, and I watched you very closely, and even just recent news, I saw you got approval in Dubai, licensing in Dubai, and then I think not too long before that in Europe, Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission approval. Can you tell us about your global expansion?
Yeah, so in general, we're looking to get licensed in as many places as possible. You know, in order for crypto to reach the next stage of its evolution, it has to grow up alongside regulatory compliance. Because after all, even though crypto itself is something very new and unique and brings interesting new technologies to the world that had never existed before, on the other hand, on markets, it's really just another product to trade. It trades very similar to the way that stocks do or futures do on other asset classes. And so the same kinds of consumer protections apply. We want to make sure that customer funds are being safeguarded. We want to make sure there's no market manipulation on the order books. And so we want to make sure we're working with regulators in every jurisdiction to receive the licensing and oversight from those regulatory agencies that lets us operate in a similar way to other traditional financial markets and be able to advertise our services to customers of those jurisdictions. And so by getting licensed in Europe by SciSec, and then recently in Dubai for various areas of MENA, we are basically growing our global footprint of the different jurisdictions we can offer to in a licensed and regulated way.
Now, you mentioned, in the United States, there's still some need for regulatory clarity on multiple fronts. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm very curious as to what you and your team and the other folks at FTX have been doing in DC, because I see some of your tweets. You're meeting with folks maybe in Congress. Sam, I know, has spoken before Congress. Tell us about some of the work you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so the first thing we're doing is purely an educational mission, which is it's clear that crypto in the US has become a bipartisan issue. Both sides of the aisle understand that crypto is an important part of the future of innovation for financial services. But the most lawmakers, as are most people, don't yet know all the different intricacies of things like different blockchains and transaction monitoring and what are the difference between exchange wallets versus non-custodial wallets and all these things that you really need to know to be able to understand what crypto is and how to regulate it. And so they're just hungry for answers and want to really learn and also to explain to people like us what is concerning to them and their constituents. So we've really just been making pilgrimages to DC to talk to people in person, introduce ourselves, explain various things about stablecoins, about crypto regulation, about futures and derivatives. And so that's sort of thing number one. But thing number two is, we're hoping to help guide regulation in the right direction. Like on one hand, we understand that the industry's call to make sure that we can continue to innovate and we're not, boxed in too much or pushing our intellectual property overseas. On the other hand, though, we want to make sure that there is proper regulation and that exchanges or other crypto companies aren't allowed to just sort of like freely do things that could result in people getting scammed very easily, for example. So we're trying to provide guidance where we can as either bills are written or regulatory rules are passed by agencies and those sorts of things.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of educating that's needed and advocacy as well. On that note, I think I'll jump into the crypto regulations aspect of this conversation. What are your thoughts on President Biden's crypto executive order from a couple of weeks ago? Do you see this as a positive outcome?
Yeah, I do see it as a positive outcome. What I appreciated about the order was it wasn't prescriptive. It wasn't, we need to create a central bank digital currency. It was, we need to explore through an interagency project to what extent a CBDC would be helpful or harmful, or if so, what it would look like, what services it would provide, should we use it, should we not use it? What would its relationship be to banks? What would the relationship be to existing private stablecoins? And the fact that these groups are going to go out now and do studies, do research, provide reports, talk to industry participants, talk to academics, and come up with a holistic picture of the crypto space is very promising for signaling that the administration is taking this very seriously as a very important technology to get right from a regulation and from a legal standpoint. And so I think that's why people are pretty happy about the order, is that it showed that their willingness to engage on the issues in a proper way.
For sure. And I think it's even changed some of the language coming from certain individuals. I think just this past week, Janet Yellen was interviewed by CNBC and she kind of changed her narrative a bit, right? And talking more about the innovation versus what she was saying at the beginning of the bad side or the FUD, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, look what everything happening right now in Ukraine and showing how useful crypto was in people being able to contribute on a global scale directly to the Ukrainian government through crypto. And on the other hand, exchanges basically proving that crypto is not an efficient way of sanctioned Russian individuals and institutions being able to avoid those sanctions. And so I think that has helped to change the narrative a little bit and show like this is actually the promise of crypto. It is a global intermediary resistant, censor resistant, instant settlement, low fee payment processor. And that, as in its use case in that particular function, is very, very useful.
Now, with that said, we've got some positive things going, more members of Congress, bipartisan support for crypto. Many folks still have their eyes on the SEC and maybe the Biden crypto executive order. The fruits of this collaboration will help put the SEC or keep the SEC at bay, maybe is what I'm trying to say, because we see the SEC is coming a bit heavy-handed, BlockFi getting fined, Coinbase lending getting blocked, no Bitcoin spot ETF approvals. And then you have these lawsuits against various altcoins and so forth, like Library, Ripple. What are your thoughts on the SEC and how they're handling crypto regulations?
Right. So there are two primary regulators for markets in the US, and there's the SEC and the CFTC. And the tough thing right now is that spot Bitcoin is not a security, but it's also not a commodity future for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. So it sits in this gray area where it's not regulated by a markets regulator. We are, as a business, our exchange, FTX US, is regulated like MoneyGram. We're a money transmitter. We're a money services business, which is appropriate for certain aspects of it, like making sure that we are complying with, Bank Secrecy Act style regulation, anti-money laundering checks, know your customer checks, things like that. But it's not the same as making sure that the markets themselves are functioning in an orderly fashion or being regulated properly. So this is the open question for us right now: is which agency or some combination of the two is going to end up with markets regulation. But of course, the tricky thing is, what are digital assets? Are they more like commodities? Are they more like securities? Are they somewhere in between? Does the question not even matter? And we should be answering a different question, which is, what regulation for digital assets as a whole is important for us to make sure that we are protecting consumers? And so right now, SEC is, I believe, is playing more the role of, look, there are clearly some scams going on in the crypto world. There are clearly cases where a token is really just a proxy for a share of stock in some company, but it's not being issued through the normal process, and we need to bring it under that regulatory envelope. On the other hand, there's still this ambiguous area of everything in between, like protocol tokens and government tokens that have yet to be figured out. And one thing that we would like to see more is just general clarity over what a registration process would look like for tokens to be able to register either with the SEC or the CFTC or some combination of the two, so that people can just safely innovate in the US under a proper regulatory regime.
Yeah, for sure. And I've said it many times that there are scams, as in any market, right? There's people looking to do bad things, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Do you feel there needs to be an updated Howey test or a new test for digital assets, cryptocurrencies, which, the people who wrote and put together the Howey test had no idea about decentralized networks globally with tokens on them in the secondary
Orange
market.
groves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point, which is, and we're not going to get too deep into the legal weeds here, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, so I'm not an expert on this at all, but is the Howey test really the right set of questions to be asking? What is that really useful for right now? It's good for trying to say whether some token is 2 inches to the left or 2 inches to the right of being a security. But does that really matter? Where if it's like, okay, if it's 2 inches to the right, it's under this one very well-defined but strict regulatory regime, whereas going to be a bunch of things that don't really apply to digital assets? Or is it 2 inches to the left, in which case it's completely unregulated by any markets regulator, and it's just on exchanges, as they are now? I think neither of those two things are really correct. I think there should be something else, which is, for all tokens, what disclosures are required so that investors can make sound decisions about whether to invest in that token. And FTX US Derivatives actually recently put out a proposal for a token registration process for tokens that would be underlying derivatives on our exchange that we think could serve as a good model for this, where it asks questions like, how is the token founded? What network is the token on? What is the supply? Can the supply be changed? Who are the principal people that can affect the code? What's the roadmap for the token? What are the notable raises that have been done or token sales that have been affected? These are the kinds of things that would help people understand the properties of tokens to be able to invest, that aren't asking the question, is it a security, yes or no? Just, what is this actually, like in a positive way? What is this token, and should I invest in it, yes or no? And that's where, again, we think this should head ideally.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with that. And great to see that, you guys are leading the charge and putting out some of these potential frameworks and suggesting ideas. Now, I want to circle back to FTX and some of the great marketing you guys have been doing. Of course, the Super Bowl ad, which I thought was the best crypto ad, within the Super Bowl. You guys have got some great partners like Tom Brady, Steph Curry, and so forth. Tell us about your marketing strategy and how did you guys sign some of these big names?
Yeah, so Sam had this, I think, what seems simple, but was a pretty revolutionary idea, which was, look, if we want to become known to 50 million people overnight, how do we do it? I mean, we're a pretty unknown exchange in the US. We don't have that many customers, and we're going up against Coinbase, which has been around for 10 years and has 50 million customers. What do we do? And I think conventional wisdom would say, well, you start acquiring users through digital advertising, right? Like Google ads or iOS app store placements. And Sam said, we need to think bigger. What's the craziest, biggest, splashiest thing that we could do that also is in line with what our brand is? And then it turns out that at the right place at the right time, there was this naming rights deal for the Miami Heat Stadium, which came up as American Airlines was ending their like 19-year deal. And it was a perfect opportunity. Name a stadium, the FTX Arena, work with Miami-Dade County on anti-gun violence initiatives. And it just all came together really well at the time. And all of a sudden, this unknown exchange is now the face of this iconic property in Miami. I think that really kicked things off for us in realizing that there are things that are within our grasp now that can really establish our brand presence on a global stage. The other thing is that, as we said, there's a lot of noise in this industry. It's hard to know who to trust with your savings if you're going to invest. Well, Major League Baseball, who are now the official exchange, crypto exchange partner of, imagine what an old institution, a time-honored institution like Major League Baseball had to do to get comfortable with taking on its first ever crypto partner. You can imagine the amount of due diligence they had to do on us and how they need to get comfortable with our team and our mission and our business and our product. And I think that signal really resonates with fans who say, well, if MLB trusts FTX, then so do I. And it helps lend credibility to our name and to our business, even though we haven't been around for a very long time. And so that's like a lot of the thinking behind why we did a lot of these big branding partnerships to begin with, was to help people understand how serious we are as a company and show that we can really build trust among these iconic partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as someone who's in digital marketing, certainly understand that aspect, but nothing beats branding. I've seen it time and time again. Having a strong brand that resonates is so important. And like you said, with these partners, you're really helping your brand to resonate with folks. So that's pretty cool. I have to ask, I've seen photos of Sam sleeping in the office. Does he do that often? And do you have any funny stories you can share of Sam?
Oh man.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
So yes, he does. Sam is the hardest working person in the company, or at least one of the hardest working people in the company. I think Sam is an amazing multitasker. And so my funny story is one time Sam wrote me a fairly detailed message on one of our internal messaging apps. And it was like an analysis of some, document. And it was like a very, astute expert analysis of some prospectus of something. And as I'm reading it, I looked up my screen and saw that he was on live TV, giving an interview on live TV, while simultaneously writing to me this very in-depth analysis of a document. And I think that pretty much sums it up.
Wow. I would not be able to multitask like that while being, especially with being on live TV.
No, I can't walk and chew gum. It's not.
I'm curious, obviously you guys are doing a lot. Is there anything you can hint towards or give us an update on with regards to your roadmap for the remainder of this year?
Yeah, sure. So we have like three main verticals we're looking to grow and expand on this year. One is in the derivative space. So we have an application in with the CFTC to enable margin in our exchange clearinghouse. And the goal there is to let people use margin to exercise capital efficient trades. So when people want to trade futures, they don't want to put up $100 for a $100 position. They want to put up $40 for a $100 position because it's more capital efficient, especially if something isn't going to be that volatile or if the risk is going to be managed properly. So that's thing one that we're trying to do, to really enable volume to come to our exchange in the US. The second is we are working on, as I mentioned earlier, a retail product for trading stocks alongside with crypto. And the goal here is to provide like a single inclusive investing experience in one place. And the third is we're working on a couple of interesting partnerships on the back end to help power games with our NFT and blockchain technology and our wallet custodial services. We announced we recently acquired Good Luck Games, which has the game Storybook Brawl, and that's hopefully going to be a very interesting, test bed for us to show people the power of doing blockchain-based gaming in the right way. And so those are like the three main areas we're hoping to, explore on the roadmap in the coming year.
Oh, that's exciting. Let's talk about the crypto market at large. Many are saying that we've kind of entered into a bear market. I still think we're in a bull market. I know this may be a difficult question for you to answer because you're on the exchange side, but I'm curious, do you feel that we still have ways to go for new all-time highs this year, or do you think we're kind of in a bear market now?
Yeah, it's hard to know how to time a market which is very young, and it's very difficult to ascribe a cyclical nature to a product that is evolving so fast. Think on many networks like competing layer ones or layer two rollups, and different applications exist now that did not exist 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And also think about all of the institutional capital, the venture capital that's come into crypto in the last couple of years, billions of dollars, right? And so regardless of what the asset prices are doing now, there's investment, there's intellectual capital, there's technological developments happening. And I think that is long-term bullish for the space. Now, what that means in the short term about asset prices, it's like difficult to predict. And that's definitely, not my area of expertise. But I do feel pretty strong about the growth of the sector and the technology based on how much work is being put into it.
Now, we've seen Bitcoin get significant adoption and have significant growth. We have corporates putting on their balance sheet. El Salvador has made it a legal tender. Bitcoin mining is booming in the United States, and more members of Congress seem to be Bitcoiners now. They're holding Bitcoin and so forth. Do you expect this trend to continue where we see more companies add Bitcoin to their balance sheet, maybe an Apple or Google, and maybe other countries following El Salvador's model?
Yeah, definitely. I think this trend is only going to continue. I think one thing crypto has done well is give other people like a fear of missing out. Like, are they going to miss out on an alternative asset that might be inflation protection, or it might be just an asset to invest in, or it might be a signal to people that they're willing to move forward and innovate in this new financial space. I do think that a lot of companies are going to start to figure out ways to be crypto adjacent, whether it's directly holding crypto or it's in investing in some kind of digital ledger technology based solutions to their existing problems, or just investing in other companies doing blockchain based technology or other kinds of crypto based technology, using their own balance sheet. So I think it's going to be a combination of all the above, and I think we're still in the phase of growing the pie of capital in the crypto world.
On that note of growth, under the umbrella of crypto, we've seen NFTs take off and have huge investments and growth and so forth. And included with that is maybe the metaverse. What are your thoughts? I know you guys have an NFT marketplace. What are your thoughts on how that market has taken off? And do you see NFTs going beyond just artwork and getting maybe some real world applications with certificates and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is, but I think that NFTs have been great for bringing people to crypto, because I think they're a lot easier of an entryway into understanding what crypto is. I mean, if your first thing that you do in crypto is you have to open an account at an exchange, then you have to deposit some money, and you have to pick an asset to convert to, and then you have to set up a non-custodial wallet, and then transfer between them and understand proof of work versus proof of stake.
Yeah,
this is difficult to do for a lot of people, compared to, hey, own a collectible. and this collectible is yours and it's no one else's. That's something that people resonate with. Oh, I've collected baseball cards in my life, but I understand that. Or I know what it means to have like a ticket to an event that gave me rights to go to backstage passes later or something like that, right? So I think that is why NFTs have resonated so much with newcomers to crypto, and why it's brought so many new wallet holders into the space. I do think that we're in some really early day where it's a lot of what is happening with NFTs now is noise, and the space is going to mature beyond it to find real interesting use cases beyond just art. And I do think art is a fantastic, and music is a fantastic use case for NFTs, and will continue to do so. But a lot of the the profile pics and the avatars and stuff, I think that will at some point kind of die down. Here's an example of something that we have done, and we care a lot about this particular application of NFTs. So we partnered with Coachella, the music festival, and we issued 10 NFTs that each one would give you a lifetime pass to Coachella.
Wow.
And this is super cool because they never before ever issued like lifetime Coachella passes. And it was in the form of an NFT, and so it could trade like an NFT. And what this showed people was, here's an example of an NFT with real world utility. We like the idea of NFTs being used for real world experiences, gated experiences, getting into a private chat or Discord server if you have the NFT, of being able to go to an event with an NFT, of being able to redeem the NFT for some actual physical piece of artwork. We think that's a great use case for NFTs. We're excited about the use case of NFTs for games. Think about how large the in-game NFT market is, in-game item market is right now, where people are buying skins and loot boxes and avatars and selling their characters that they've leveled up on eBay. This could all benefit from having a much better, a much better marketplace that's more transparent, that's open, that people can access and use with traditional financial tools. And those to me are pretty compelling use cases for NFTs.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that lifetime ticket to Coachella use case. That's pretty awesome. And I can see a lot of folks, in different aspects, whether it be sports or music or concerts, whatever it is, doing that. And they don't have to worry about losing the documentation. And to your point, they could trade that and give it to somebody else or whatever it may be. That's pretty cool. I want to get your thoughts on CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. It seems like every central bank around the world is building this, and they're building it on different blockchains. What are your thoughts on what's happening? They're taking the blockchain tech and tokenizing fiat. What do you think the impact will be on the crypto market as these things start getting launched?
Sure. So one of the most difficult things in the traditional financial system is sending money. And we realize this is like the raison d'etre for blockchain technology sort of to begin with, which is like being able to easily send money without worrying about intermediaries needing to trust them. It's notoriously difficult to wire reasonably sized amounts of money between two financial institutions. I think one thing that CBDCs could solve is that problem, basically making like interbank transfers instant. It wouldn't be the only way to do that though. And there are other programs that have been proposed by the US Fed, for example, that wouldn't require a blockchain technology, but would still be a digital instant settlement system between banks. And personally, I'd be much more excited about that. I'm not necessarily sure what blockchain really brings to a CBDC. But to the extent that it is going to happen, what we don't want to see happen is a CBDC meaning that private institutions can no longer issue stablecoins. Because private institutions have done an amazing job of creating stablecoins. They are a really important part of the ecosystem. They establish dollar dominance in DeFi marketplaces outside of the US. And they should be here to stay. And maybe there'd be some way in which they would interact with the CBDC. But if the CBDC was required to replace them, I think that would be a problem. So it'll be interesting to see where the debate and development goes with CBDCs in either other countries first or eventually in the US. I do think dollar-backed fiat digital currencies like USDC are really important and want to see those continue to grow.
For sure. One of the concerns I personally had, and I've spoken to quite a few folks, some in Congress about this as well, and that is maintaining the constitutional right to privacy with a digital dollar. And I know this is a dialogue still happening, and hopefully they get it right. Do you have any concerns with that, where everything that, we go to a cashless society, everything is tracked now?
Yeah, I think even like the idea of going to a cashless society is not really easy, and it's a big leap from where we are now. I mean, there are many places in the United States that don't have good access to the internet. And if you don't have access to the internet, how are you supposed to deal with transactions if everything is digital? Is there some way of doing offline transactions? How would that work? There are lots of reasons why, cash in small amounts for transactions is still systemically important for people, especially people who have like lower to middle tier income in the United States. So I think, to answer your question, I think that CBDCs would be important for ensuring proper surveillance, but by that I really mean transaction monitoring for large kinds of transactions that might trip flags for illicit finance. On the other hand, it would be, I think, probably in general not good if people could track your exact spend every single place you've ever done it, although they probably mostly can right now, given how many people buy everything online. I think we're seeing slightly more concerning scenarios in places that don't have as free and open societies as the United States has, where the CBDCs is really like a backdoor into surveillance of citizens, of private citizens. And so I do think this is something to be concerned about in general with the technology.
Yeah. Hopefully they get it right. And I know some people do have the concern of, well, could they do a social credit system like China or something like that? I don't think that will happen here, but nevertheless, it is a concern. And once again, I hope they get it right here in the United States at least. Okay, where do you see the crypto market in 5 years? And I know that's a loaded question, hard to maybe answer, but I'm just off the top of your head, where do you see
Sure.
things?
Here's a couple off-the-cuff predictions that I have very weak conviction about. One is, I think we'll see consolidation in the blockchain space. We're not going to have 200 different blockchains. I think we're going to end up with a couple that are really, really good and are mostly used while the other ones will drop away. Bitcoin likely still exists because it's the first. Ethereum probably still exists because it's the first real smart contract-based blockchain. And then there's a handful of layer ones that are are contending for spots for longevity. I think things like Solana and Avalanche, and we'll see which ones of those truly win out over time. And part of it will be the merits of the actual technology, and part of it will just be where are the killer apps being created. So that's one trend I expect to see. I also at some point expect to see the list of possible tokens that could be listed on exchanges get somewhat more under control. Again, on the FTX US, we've been pretty conservative about what we list, exactly because it's probably described earlier in the podcast about SEC jurisdiction and what's a security and what's not. And I think, hopefully within the next couple of years, we get really good clarity over the registration process. And either we'll see a lot drop out, or it could be the registration process is great and people are registering tokens faster than they're registering equities on stock exchanges, in which case, it will just continue to grow even larger in the United States. So those are the two things I'm going to be looking out for.
Very cool. All right, I got some wrap-up questions for you. First is, if you could create your own metaverse, what would be the theme?
Ooh, tough question. I would like to see a metaverse for remote gathering, remote work be done really well.
Mm.
We started playing around with the app Gather. Have you seen that? Where it's like a digital office space, and what's cool about it is that as your characters walk farther away from other ones, you can hear their volume less and less. So it simulates actually being able to move away from a conversation. And there's some areas in your virtual office where if you're in it, only people who are in that little room with you can hear you. So you can actually break out into private rooms, and there are little games you can play together in the private office. I think it's great. I think it's like a proof of concept or a prototype of what a true remote work style metaverse could entail. And so I like to see that grow.
Wow, I have to check that out. That sounds pretty interesting. I would love to trial that out. It's Gather, right?
Yeah.
I'll check that out after this. Okay, some rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
Ramen.
Favorite musician or band?
Miles Davis.
Favorite movie?
Spirited Away.
Favorite book?
Favorite book. Oh gosh, I have many, but I'm trying to think what I come back to me on this one. I will come back to you with what my favorite book.
And when you're not working at FTX, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
Well, my wife and I we're both vegan and big into like animal welfare and stuff, and we rescued a lot of pets. So a lot of our free time is spent with our large pet family and our child. And I'll throw a random book out there. It's hard to pick a favorite one, but I really like the book The Shipping News by Annie Proulx.
Mm. By the way, with regards to your pets, I saw your tweets with all the cats and everything. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And that was something I was going to ask you about. It totally makes sense. You guys rescue a lot of.
Yeah, we have 5 dogs and 6 cats.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a little bit out of control.
That's awesome though. And I can't imagine. I have 1 cat, and we're also thinking about getting a dog here, my wife and my daughter. But we're like, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to handle it now? I mean,
you will. Don't worry.
Brett, pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, great to be on. Thanks so much.